Hello, KFC SuperCoaches. It's the Game Day podcast, and we start with breaking news. That is that Josh Schuster is out yet again. It's not a drill. We started the show with the exact same breaking news last week. It's the same injury, the quad. We've got some big guests here today with Dave Campbell and Joe Nadaf for his season debut as well. We'll start with you, Joe. How are you affected by this Josh Schuster news that has literally just broken?
Mate, that's changed. We're all spending the work. So I just left work in a rush here, walk in here, you told me the big news. I go, here we go, what's happening? And Josh Schuster's out. That was my trading this week. I've held off. It was a downgrade for me, so back to drawing boards.
What are you going to do? Do you have any immediate thoughts?
I don't think he's a bad buy either way. I mean, he's going to come in sooner or later, so, but geez.
Campbell?
Go back to the drawing boards.
I jumped on Schuster early, so I've already had him, so it's not a trade issue for me this week, but it does mean I will have to play Katoa in his place. So, you know, who knows how he'll go against the Cowboys. Hopefully gets a decent score, but we have seen the floor for him can be quite low, so it could be rocks or diamonds. Look,
I've got him, and I wasn't going to play him anyway in that tough matchup against the Panthers, but I've got him stashed in the back row, not at 5'8". So I've got an ideal situation where it basically doesn't affect me, but we're starting to get worried about Josh Schuster and his fitness. He's had cramps, quads, calves, everything.
I never rated him as a purchase, to be honest. I mean, the first game with the 59 with, I think, 3 try assists and try contribution really turned me off him. So I guess I'll just go back to drawing boards. Got to probably pick up someone in the second row. But we'll find someone.
Let's dive into the biggest issue facing your team this week. I think we've probably covered it with you, the Josh Schuster breaking news, but what else have you got?
Mate, my biggest thing is I've got no 5'8". I'm running at the moment with Katoa and AJ Brimson, who was hot on in the pre-season, and I held off hoping he'd come back for this game against the Dragons. So for me, it's probably Dylan Brown or Cody Walker. So yet to decide.
I kind of like Cody Walker, and Dylan Brown's got a good matchup this week as well. What's the biggest issue?
Similar situation, Katoa or Schuster for me, and I'm probably not going to do anything this week. I'm going to leave that for next week. But I think one of the things a lot of coaches are grappling with at the moment is whether to move on Hopgood, given he's been benched. Is it time to kind of cash him in and try and upgrade him to a gun? A lot of people are doing it. He'll probably come out and score a try this week.
Probably.
Yeah. My issue is, who is the best cheapie this week? I need to bring in at least one to create cash for Nicho Hynes next week. I've gone with Isaac Fa'asuamaleaui, but I'm worried that his minutes are inflated, particularly in his last game when Brimson went down and Foran went down. It caused a massive reshuffle. And Fa'asuamaleaui played 47 minutes. I'm expecting more like 25 minutes from his first match. So I don't think he's necessarily the best cheapie, but I basically have to get him in because I have to free money for Nicho next week.
Yeah, well, that's my issue, as David said, to get rid of Hopgood and bring someone in. That was going to be ideally Schuster. So I think you could probably go a little bit higher. Hame Sele could be an option, about 300k. Sean Russell as well for the Parramatta Eels if he can stick. It's a little bit early on both though, but it's a free look this week. But I'll tell you, this Schuster news is pretty big.
And the other one is, at prop particularly, is Lindsay Smith, who was sensational last week, but it was his first game of the year. They've got a whole bunch of guys to come back, including Liam Martin, maybe Luke Garner, plus James Fisher-Harris, who's the guy who's really replacing this week. So I want to take another look at Lindsay Smith.
He's very likely though, isn't he?
He does. He looks great.
Apart. He just gets in there, bustles, he grabs the ball in front, he rips and tears.
The boys are just working up a story in the office now about how he is the guy who's going to take over from Spencer Leniu next year, with Leniu going to the Roosters. So they really want to build minutes into him. So I'm liking a lot of things about Lindsay Smith, but I just want to take one more look.
I'm with you.
Let's pimp your teams, guys. Send your questions through on Facebook. Dave's on YouTube. And Joe, you're manning your personal WhatsApp groups as well. I'm mining them for comments.
But I got off the bat already. Chris Sabood here. Is there a world where you'd hold onto Teddy, who'll be a super pod after this week? And he's already lost his money, so there's no point in catching him. So, thoughts on Teddy?
We haven't heard anything from the Roosters about how long he's out for. He's got the mandatory stand down for 11 days, so that's one game. But does he get stood down for more, given his history? Haven't heard anything from the Roosters, which is a little bit scary for me.
And they've got options in Sualihi and obviously Joey Mano at the back there, so they may not have to rush him back.
And they've shown that they don't like to take risks on concussions. So look, I own Tedesco and I'm selling him.
I still think there's a lot of cash to be sitting there. I can understand if people are selling him, particularly with that such a low score. When he did get ruled out with the HIA, his break-even's quite high. He potentially... I mean, we know Teddy can come out and hit a massive score, but he's still potentially likely to lose a lot of cash. So you can spend it better elsewhere.
And where would you go if you were to trade Teddy?
Oh, it's one of those things. I mean, it's a step up to guys like Walsh now, which is a kind of a ridiculous statement that we wouldn't have thought we'd been saying a few weeks ago. But I just think moving people... There's a lot of the centre wing cheapies that we've got who had dual fullback position. You've got guys like CNK that you could potentially slot back for a little while you're looking to make money elsewhere with guys like Marzu if you're keen on taking a punt there. So it's one of the fullbacks, one of the rare positions this year where there is a lot of dual position flexibility to be able to do something like that. And that's possibly an option for people selling Teddy.
Yeah, Teddy to Marzu for me, which frees up a fair bit of cash that I can use on Nicho Hynes next week. Heaps of questions and zingers coming through as well. A reminder that if you do send through a zinger or a great sledge at one of us or just generally at anyone, you get this pop up on the screen. Harrison Southam is saying, hey, thanks, so how do I get a SuperCoach stubby cooler and can Rob sign it as well? Well,
oh, wow.
The thing is, we've got all the new merch on the table here, but the marketing department are being very possessive of it. Stuff has been stolen in the past, and they've explicitly said that we need to take it straight from the desk back down to their desk on level 2 at the end of this show. So we're not giving away any of this merch, unfortunately. Question. Hopgood to Hosking, Hammer to Marzu. They sound like good trades.
Very solid. I think Hammer's got to go. He's done his dash. His base is very low, which is sort of new coming to the season. Made a massive on Hosking. I brought him in last week and so stoked about it. He's just a super coach kind of player. And off Cleary, it's pretty good real estate out there, I reckon, on the right edge of Penrith.
Harrison saying, where's Rob? Is he at the pub today? It's a pretty good guess with Rob Sutherland. But no, I think he's driving to Adelaide today. So he's a long way away from a pub at the moment. Eli Katoa or Hopgood to Hosking? Who would you sell first? I'd be selling Hopgood first now that he's benched.
I definitely would. I think the thing with Hopgood, you've got Junior Paulo to come back into that rotation. So that's another middle forward that's going to demand minutes. So it's a lot to sort of to fight for. It's a reluctant sell with his manageable break even. Ideally, you'd wait a week, but for myself, I've got no Nicho Hynes like you, Tommy, so I've got to clear some desk somewhere. So for me, Hopgood's a go for me.
I think Hopgood as well. I think he's made quite a lot of money, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of minutes he gets from the bench. But you certainly don't want to start hemorrhaging that money that he's made when you could spend it better elsewhere on someone who's guaranteed to have more time on the field.
Some interesting stats on Hopgood. There's only 24,000 people selling him. And I say only because he was owned by 75,000 at the start of this week. So taking into account zombie players who don't really care, there are a lot of people who are holding Hopgood. I think he's a definite sell, particularly with Paulo back into that team, Maddo at lock as well.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's more team dependent. Like I said, I've got to free up cash. I'm going to do anything I can. I can't sell Katoa, who I think is a keeper at this stage and could have had so many more tries and try assists. So he's not far off the mark. I think it's a no-brainer for myself. Just got to find someone to replace him with this Schuster news.
Let's take a quick question from YouTube. Or a sledge.
Or a sledge.
A zinger.
A lot of people asking a similar question. They're trying to find the right cheapie. Who's the best centre wing cheapie?
Look, it's tough this week. I don't think there are really any.
I can't see any. No one that I would seriously consider. And that's the problem at the moment, right? We've got guys like Alamotti who you can start to make a case for moving on, but who to?
I think you have to have a replacement. Like, for example, my argument was to go from Hopgood to Schuster. There's a decent cheap that's going to make you money as well. So people are off Alamotti, unless you're going to fund like an upgrade to Marzu or Garrick or something like one of those lines. It wouldn't be. You've got to sort of sometimes work backwards and find who you're going to trade in before you're going to trade out, so you can, increase your funds in your side for the back end of the season. It's very important.
I don't think he's a buy. He's certainly not a buy this week. But one guy who could pop up next week, and I don't like it that much, is Braden Williami. He's due back from a calf injury next week. If he makes that team, and the Warriors are going well, and particularly their centres and wingers are doing well. So
and dual position.
Dual position, but I'm not sure if he's going to make it into that team. But I'm just flagging it that he could. It would be his third game, so there'd be his price rise coming up. All right, big game coming up tonight. Let's do the burning issues. Storm v the Roosters tonight. Let's talk Storm. Harry Grant, very popular as a VC. What are your thoughts?
I loved everything about him last week. I think 11 runs in the game last week compared to the week before. We had a 4 or 5 when I captained him, so it was great to see him finally take the line on. Does Jerome Hughes coming back affect his running game? I'm not too sure, but I think with Melbourne there's too many big players there and they've got to share the work around. So I wouldn't put in the VC on him personally, but I mean, Harry Grant is the top echelon of hookers in our game with the Damien Cook, so...
I don't mind it, the VC on him. I think, first matchup between him and Cheese. I think he'll be up for it. He'll want to prove that I'm better than this guy. So I really think Grant will be up for it.
Yep, that's a good call, and it's a tough matchup. So he's not actually that popular as a VC. 17%. He's been much higher than that in the past, and he's been a really popular captain too. So a little bit of a pod VC for Harry Grant standards. William Warbrick has been one of the most frustrating players. He's making me so much money. He's doing so well, but every time I play him, he is a spud and makes 5 runs and 13 points. And then the last 2 weeks, he's just come out and absolutely killed it. Do you play him this week, even with that tough matchup against the Roosters?
It's a no for me, but I'm in the same boat as you. I mean, Pereira, I get him when he gets 5 and Warbrick gets 13, but I can't get them when they score a couple of tries and line breaks. I think Pezzett was the key to unlocking Warbrick because the ball sort of shifts a bit wider with him at halfback on the right-hand side. So with Hughes back, he likes to step inside and go back with the inside. Yeah, I wouldn't play him this week.
Exactly the same boat. I've played him when he's been rubbish and then sat him on the pine when he's banged out tries. So I'm not playing him this week.
Nothing hurts more, does it?
Oh, it's just when you go through at the end of the round and look at all the people you played that got lower than the blokes who didn't.
Still in SuperCoach has been going for, I think it's 14 years. I've only once had a perfect round where I've captained my top scoring player and picked all the reserves correctly. All the top scoring reserves. It happened once in 15 years.
And they call you the expert.
Yeah. Well, I don't think it's happened to many people. That's my point. Moving on to Pezzett. You mentioned him before. Do you think he could slide back in for a bench spot tonight and therefore earn another 40-odd K for us before he gets made into
owners are probably hopeful. I'm a salty Brandon Trundle owner from last week, and when he got down on the bench, I thought, let's go in there for 1 minute, score 1 point, I'll be happy with that. I'm sure a lot of owners that do have Pezzett obviously want to go to Nico Hines next week, and they're probably wishing that Bellamy does give him a chance on the bench. I think Garlick's been fantastic for them as that middle forward and number 9 potential and can slot into a few positions. So I doubt it, but I guess like I said, owners will be hoping that he can.
Yeah, it's just it's wishful thinking. It's a Hail Mary, really. Right. You hope that it happens, but I mean, there's no real danger in holding on and having a look. That's but right. I don't think we can be really surprised if it doesn't happen.
Yeah, he's overtaken Wishart in that sort of roam-in role. So
they've sort of got 3 guys who could play that role in Wishart, Pezzett, and Bronson Garlick. So right. Look, I'm hoping Pezzett can slide in, but I'm not. I've got my fingers crossed. I don't think it's going to happen. Eliasa Katoa, absolutely on fire, but he did drop back last week to somewhere where we thought he might be at the start of the season with the 42 after killing it previously.
Yeah, well, there's no attacking stats. So in the first few games, he's had a few line breaks and obviously tries and try assists. So I think that'll come. Tough matchup. You've got to play him. I mean, 40 base. If that's his worst game, you'll definitely take it from him.
And I just want to quickly onto the Roosters. We've spoken about Teddy. We agree that he is a sell in most situations, but in terms of his position, Joey Manu has been named there. Plenty of chat that Suoli'i is going to slot in there every now and again. They might share that role. Any thought of going Suoli'i as a little bit of a pod at, I think it's 550-odd K?
587.
587.
It's quite pricey for someone who might play in the spine. Yeah. And we see a lot with these kinds of guys that their score week to week lives and dies on tries. And if he's sharing that role, I can't do it.
Yeah, not for me either, but I did have a sneaky look at Joey Manu, hoping he'd be around the 600K mark. Yeah. $800,000.
I wrote about it in my pre-season article about if Ted was going for a week as a 1 week play, I would bring in Joey Manu if he's playing at fullback, because what he did last year was just insane.
But at 800K,
you can't do it, and 140 odd break even. So, and the hint of him maybe sharing the time with Suoli'i. So yeah, definitely for me.
Harris, plenty of questions and sledges coming through. Harrison Southam says, the merch usually finds its way into Sangster's car boot. If you break into his house, it's a SuperCoach gold mine. That is actually true. That is 100% true. You should see all the stuff that's stashed in under my bed. There's too much. Do we have anything coming through on YouTube?
No, I'm on Facebook.
We're
both on Facebook. Facebook's where
I'm meant to be on YouTube.
You are.
Hit us up.
Great organisation. Josh is, poor Kane Anderson, been sacked already after one appearance.
He'll be back. Kane will be back. Strong debut.
I've got a question here from R&R. Prediction, gents. Who will be the season's top SuperCoach point scorer? Look, the facts, you've got Carraz, Lockie Miller and Hopgood in the 3 of the top 5, and SJ in the top 10. Isaac in the top 10. So it's pretty... Who would have thought that?
Oh, I know. I'm hoping that Carraz can keep it up, but with his style of play, it's going to be tough for him to keep up that work rate. I'm thinking Ruben Garrick could do it. I think he's done it before, Garrick. If Turbo stays in the team, I reckon Garrick could get there, or Turbo might even top it himself.
Yeah. I reckon Hines will come from behind. He's got a bit of ground to make up, obviously, after some weeks out with that injury, but he's obviously started hot. I wouldn't be surprised if he just keeps rolling on.
Good shouts.
On YouTube, we've got Lee asking DCE to Cleary. I think Cleary is a good buy this week. He's pretty much bottomed out. You can run him at least until Origin starts. Decent-ish run of games, and certainly a captaincy option this week against the Sea Eagles, who leaked points last week against the Knights at home at Bluebet Stadium.
Yeah, definitely. I think DCE had an awesome round 1 against the Bulldogs where he turned up, but he hasn't really shown that firepower that he normally possesses. If DC's kicking goals like it was at the start of last year, I'm all over him, but I think you got to go with Nico and Cleary. It's a no-brainer.
I don't know how many intercepts he scored this year, but it's at least 2, maybe even 3. Those won't keep coming either.
That's right, yeah.
Moving on to Egan to Hands. What are your thoughts on that? Egan's, speaking of try scorers, he just seems to...
On fire.
I think he's scored one every game, and he hasn't run more than 10 metres in all 5 of them combined. Just little barge overs or jumping on kicks and that sort of thing. But he can't keep that up, surely.
Yeah, I think for me, I'd probably got like a Sanya Luke who's guaranteed to be in the squad. Yeah. Can't look good in his first game, but I mean, Hodgson's he's an ultimate professional, Josh Hodgson. I think Parra better with him in there, so I don't know, maybe fund it some other way, I guess.
Smashy is saying Sangster is the SuperCoach pimp in that tracksuit.
Oh, yeah.
And there's the usual one, Sangster looks like an avocado, which I don't mind as well. What have we got on Facey?
I mean, to jump ahead to some more cheapies, I suppose a lot of people questioning Jack Johns and whether he's worth a punt. Obviously, there's a few guys coming back into the Knights squad. So is it worth the cash grab?
No, I don't think so, because you've got a whole bunch of guys coming back. Kurt Mann is in the team this week on return. He's on the bench, so he can play plenty of lock. Then you've got Adam Elliott due back as early as next week. You've got Saifidi coming back from suspension in round 8, and he plays in the middle rotation. I don't see him playing there for more than 1-2 weeks, and the predicted price rise is only $50,000 odd. It's too big a risk to take for $50,000 odd. If it was 100, 120, you'd go there, but not for 50k.
I think if it was a front row forward, possibly, but in the back row, it's pretty stacked. There are enough cheapies coming through. I always think, I mean, and he hasn't had much first grade, but if you're not a SuperCoach kind of player, you don't sort of flick a switch and become a SuperCoach kind of player. And to me, Johns is not a SuperCoach kind of player. You know, he got lucky with a repeat set and a try last week, and that won't happen every week. So, definite no for me.
Let's chat Friday night footy, of course, brought to you by KFC. Bulldogs v the Rabbitohs. Your doggies taking the field. They're doing pretty well. Paul Alamotti is doing particularly well for them, but a lot of people are selling this week. Do you think he is a sell?
I don't think so. So if the balance on my side is definitely not a sell, because unless she's your ticket to a Marzu or, like I said, a Garrick or a Carraz, I would do it. But for me, I want to downgrade a centre, and there's no good centres that I can replace that are cheap. I think there's a lot more money to be made. Is still yet to mature. I think as an NRL player, obviously 5 games in, that left side's pretty good, and any sort of half opportunity that he gives to Adakar should result in Alamotti in a try assist. I know it was a bit controversial last week, but there's too much to like about Alamotti for me at the moment.
Yep.
I think he's on the edge. Like his break even's right at that kind of averagey scoring. So I think you could make a case for it, but like you said, 1 try and his break even will plummet, and there'll be another $100,000 to be made there. So it's kind of that. It's that risk. Do you do you get rid of him now, or do you wait and hope that that try comes and you can make a little bit more?
Yeah, ideally he's a hold. If you have to get to Marzu or whoever it is, do it. But I think that Hopgood, Otukamanu, the Hammer are all sells before Alamotti. Jacob Preston. So looks like he will play despite that finger/hand injury. He's been so good. He's been one of the buys of the season and still more money to make. I think he's got a predicted price rise of 60k after this week.
Well, his break-even's only -3. So even if he's playing reduced minutes due to that injury, he's still going to make money. I guess the question is more, do you stick a reserve on him or do you sit him out and see how he goes?
Yeah, I've got the R on him for now, but of course they play so early in the round that you can switch it up later on, so it's pretty convenient in those terms.
Yeah, mate, this kid is an absolute revelation. As a Bulldog supporter, I'm so excited. When we signed him to poach him from the Roosters, Gus, what a steal that was. He'll play a lot of first grade, and I think it's a definite hold, and he's too tough. We're too depleted, especially in the forwards, to not have him play. Had we had, a RFM or a Kiko available, maybe you think reduced minutes, but with that injury toll, we need Presto.
Let's chat Rabbitohs now. Cam Murray, a lot of people sold last week to free up cash for Hines, but as soon as you did, Cameron Murray comes up with a good score. We knew that was going to happen.
Yeah, well, I started with him. For me, with Murray, it's a lot of passing, a lot of touches, and when he gets lucky, he set up Cody Walker last week, he hit that 88 sort of a score, so that's a sort of, if his worst game is 60 and the potential to go 100 plus, that's enough for me. I'm glad the masses jumped off him. I'm stoked.
Yeah, I kept him as well, so really happy to see all the people that sold him. But just brings home the age-old SuperCoach adage of never sell a keeper.
That's right.
Yeah.
Pretty simple.
With him, he's dropped to a decent price too. So if you don't own him, you could get on in the next couple of weeks. And a lot of Rabbitohs are dropping in price because they've had that really tough start to the year. So you can get Latrell at 190k less than he started the year. He's one I'm looking at. Cody Walker, who you were talking about, is one I'm looking at. And definitely Cameron Murray as well.
Yeah, well, Latrell, back to the question I asked you earlier about Teddy, if I did have Teddy, I wouldn't go to Walsh. I'd definitely go to Latrell. Mate, he's going to turn up big very soon, and the Bulldogs match up. He loves a Good Friday game. He loves a day game. Depleted Bulldogs. I'm actually scared that I don't have him. Terrified. Definitely captain option.
Cowboys v the Dolphins. All about Valentine Holmes here. A lot of people have owned him, hoping that he'd get these big attacking stats in that easy run that they have to start the season. Hasn't quite happened, but he's been really solid. His base is almost at the 50 mark when you take into account goal kicking. He's barely got any attacking stats on top of that, unfortunately. But the Dolphins are looking depleted. I think it is a home game for the Cowboys, so this could be the week.
I think it'll be big. That big score's coming. His scores have ranged from 47 to 69 with only one try for the season. So at some point, he's going to get over for a couple and go big. I mean, you're not unhappy with the scores you've been producing. You just expected that every once in a while there'll be that big one, and we just haven't had it yet. I reckon this week's the week.
Yeah, I think he's barely scratched the surface, and now with Drinkwater back, that'll unlock as well their edge over there. He's got the Dolphins, Warriors into Knights. So obviously the Warriors have been a bit more stingy this year, but then the Knights after that, we saw the amount of points that Manly scored on their edges on the weekend. They pretty much walked over for a lot of their tries, so I would not be selling.
Taking some questions from YouTube. The Crazy Praying Mantis is saying, I said last week I'm avoiding Schuster completely. He's not going to make enough money because he will be injured every second week, and he's not a play anyway. So Crazy Praying Mantis is on point, that's for sure. Will the VC loop work this week with Franklin Pele since he's returning in round 14? Yeah, it will. It will. He definitely won't play this week. Is Carrigan a sell for Hosking? I think he is, because Payne Haas is just doing so much in that team that Carrigan, there's nothing left for Carrigan.
No, that was my trade last week. I think Carrigan went down about 30 odd K and just produced 40 odd points, and that was a blowout, so they didn't really need him on the field. I was so high on Carrigan at the start of the year, which is why I started with him. I just thought he just, he's let me down a little bit. Oh,
we've got a question that affects you, actually, Joe. Dillbags or Cody Walker? Who would you go first?
Dylan Brown was my all week.
Yeah.
Was my thing. Great matchup. I think Tigers into... He's got 3 soft games coming up, I know that for sure. But to pay upwards of $700,000, I'm going to go Cody Walker, I think.
Yep.
Lower break even. I need that extra $170,000 difference to fund Nico next week.
Yeah.
And that's the factor for me. I think Dylan Brown outscores him comfortably the next 3 or 4 weeks, but it's that step up to Nico next week, and I can't let that one go.
Do you still kind of think that way if you consider Dylan Brown as that I guess, that buy coverage, starting to look towards making sure you're fielding a decent team?
Yeah. I think Cody's my 2 or 3 week play, and hopefully they'll marry up at the same sort of price in 2 or 3 weeks. So hopefully the Tigers show up and bring their shoulders on Monday and can keep him quiet, and they can sort of somewhere in between.
Look, we're going to have plenty of late changes this week. Let's do late mail. So some big news at the Warriors this week, or yesterday it was, where 12 players set out training. They've told us, though, that was just because they've had a big travel schedule. They've flown for 30 hours so far this year, so they're getting around a fair bit. So they rested a fair few players, including Jackson Ford, who's a really popular SuperCoach player. But one guy who did take the field is Tohu Harris. He's still rated 50-50, though. Is Tohu a guy... What are your plans with him? Do you own him, and when do you think you'll bring him in? Because he will be crucial over the buys.
I was a regretful non-owner until that injury, and then I was kind of like, I dodged a bullet there. But a lot of people are asking, is it worth it to wait and see, or do you just pull the trigger on him now and spend that money elsewhere? Honestly, it's a coin flip for me. If I owned him, I'd be pulling my hair out.
Yeah, especially so late in the week. He played, I think, second last game or third last game.
Yeah.
So it's a reluctant. As a non-owner, I hope he gets less minutes and drops down in price, somewhere around 500k mark. Dual position, come Origin, who would definitely be in a lot of teams.
Ryan Pappenhausen is back running, which is big news for the Storm and Supercoaches. There was some footage floating around on Twitter, but it still looks like he's going to return later than that round 8, they originally said. Looked like a bit later than that. Jacob Preston set to play despite that hand injury. And as we mentioned at the top of the show, if you missed it, Josh Schuster is likely out this week. Not 100% confirmed yet, but likely out, so factor that in. But they do have Jason Saab back into that team from an ACL injury. Thoughts on him? Because he did kill it that one season when Turbo was just running riot over everyone.
Yeah, I had a sneaky look at that 400k. I think if you can drop down a little bit in price, come the buys when Turbo's away from Origin, who's going to feed him that ball to score those tries? Definitely match-up dependent. Against the good sides, his base is really poor. He doesn't do the hard stuff, so watch.
Yeah,
definitely watch.
Exactly, a watch, especially coming back from the ACL injury. We always say that with players. They don't necessarily come back exactly the same player that they were. And, first game, so we've got a couple of weeks to see exactly how he's pulling up in his first games back before we need to worry about whether he's going to, spike up in price if he manages to get on it at the end of a couple. So it's a definite watch, at least for 2 weeks.
That's right.
I love this segment, guys. Let's do guilty pleasures. This is the player that you shouldn't pick, but your heart keeps telling you to do it. Who's yours?
My boy, Blake Lawrie.
Blakey boy, yeah, that's right. The new George Rose.
I love it. They're just get these tries. I know it's not going to continue. I don't have him in my team. I keep looking at him, and I'll never do it. But
how good is his work rate, considering how much he's a specimen? Obviously, his work rate's sensational, and he's got the 3rd most points of any prop this year.
Yeah, and every game he finishes bleeding from the head, he's just, exited a war zone. He's just like that quintessential front row, old school front rower.
Yeah, he's a footy player. He's not a modern athlete. He's a footy player.
He's a character. You see him on the Matty Johns show. He's always, in there roughing him up a little bit.
So he's been scoring great, but it's not going to continue.
It can't.
He's averaging 66 at the moment. It's ridiculous.
I think it's the only 2 tries he scored in his career.
He
scored one. He scored one in the 130 odd games before.
And then in 2 games he's doubled or tripled.
Who's your guilty pleasure?
Mate, I got a soft spot for this guy. He got me the overall prize in 2020, and we've spoken about it. Cody Walker. Like I said, all week I was on Dylan Brown. But like I said, that 190, $170,000 cheaper. Up against my Bulldogs, I hate bringing in players against my team for that week, so it's a bit nervous. But like I said, hopefully the price difference between Dylan Walker and Dylan Brown and Cody Walker will marry up in a few weeks, and I'll go back to Dylan Walker for that bye coverage. A lot of love for him. So I've got to fund Nicho Hynes, and I think that's my ticket.
Yeah, I've got to fund Nicho too. So it's Tedesco down to Mars Yu, who is my guilty pleasure. His defence is not good. He doesn't really miss tackles, but he just doesn't get himself in the spot to actually make a tackle in the first place. Yeah. So there's a big chance that he does get dropped for his defence, but he's an absolute beast in SuperCoach. You're looking at 25 runs a game, tackle bust galore, pretty good offloads. Knights are actually a decent attacking team, even though they're not going that well this year. So he's in, and my justification is, even if he does get dropped next week, he's predicted to make about 150k this week. So he's going to make money no matter what. So just bring him in, and he could become a keeper, or at the very least, he's going to make me 120, 130.
Did you see him 0-win at the centre against Manly? He just missed Tuapoloto. Didn't have any eyes for him, and Tuapoloto just walked over for a try. It's, oh, jeez. He's so good to watch, though. Like, his tackle busting is just insane.
He's a freak.
I'm loving Hastings and Gamble, shifting the ball so well. Like, their Knights they're scoring points. Why not?
I'm going to take some questions from YouTube. Final reserve, Katoa, Kepi, or Warbrick? Interesting. So Katoa's playing the Cowboys. Relatively tough matchup. Kepi's playing the Panthers. I'd just rule that out straight away. Panthers are so measly. And then Warbrick's got the Roosters tonight. Tough matchup, but he's in form. Yeah. But as you mentioned, he's got Jerome Hughes inside him this week instead of Pezzett.
I'm going to probably go Katoa, being the lead playmaker. He got a try assist last week early on. I played him last week, so he was off 20 points at the start. I was hoping for a 55-60. I managed 40. So I need to take a punt on probably Warbrick to score a try.
I think it's either Warbrick or Katoa. I'd check the weather on this one first. See if it's
maybe who plays first.
Hot.
Play them first.
If it's hot and a dry track, I'd probably go Katoa playing up in Townsville.
Yeah, Katoa for me as well. I think he's got more chance of hitting that ceiling, and Warbrick definitely coming up against stiffer competition than he's faced the last couple of weeks, I think. So, he could still bang out a great score, but I think there's less chance of that than there has been.
Okay. This segment is brought to you by KFC. It's Cheapie of the Week. So, as I mentioned before, cheapies it's a tough market this week. There's not many standout options. If you're going for someone, you're going to have to take someone who you probably have a few misgivings about. First on my list is for Asamoah. He is the second most popular cheapie this week behind Jack Johns, who we'll get to in a sec. But what are your thoughts on for Asamoah? I think his minutes have been inflated. I don't think he's a good cheapie. But his job security is okay. So I'm going to bring him in. Hopefully he can barge over for a try and make a little bit of coin. I just need to get someone in to get Nicho Hynes.
Who are you saying for him?
Utukamanu.
Okay. Yeah, I don't like it. Front row, there's third and fourth front row that are cheap. We've seen Mawali, we've seen Pele. They're just not producing. If it's the only way to fund and free up cash for it, you've got to do it. He's the best of the pick, definitely over Jack Johns. Jack Johns.
What about over Lindsay Smith? Would you take a flyer on Lindsay?
I'd go Smith.
Yeah?
If we knew some more information about JFH, Fisher Harris' injury, which we don't.
Yeah, I haven't heard
There's not much floating around. He can hold his spot. He looks the goods. He just rips and tears. He's like, you talk about Blake Laurie being an old school footballer. This guy was pushing guys out of the way to get in and get the ball. So
yeah, I like it. And with that chat that I said before about him being the new Spencer Leniu, then that should guarantee him some decent minutes. Yeah. Thoughts on Isaac Fa'asuamaleaui?
I jumped on early last week. Again, it's not something I'm overly thrilled with, but again, we need to start freeing up some cash here and there to beef up the team elsewhere. And there's just not much around at the moment. A lot of the cheapies we started with, some of them are starting to peak and you're ready to move them on over the next week or so. But there's just not a lot around. You've got to pull the trigger on someone, and he's my guy.
Let's chat Jack Johns because he is the most purchased cheapie this week. But with Safidi coming back, Mann's floating around there, Elliott's coming back, I'm not going it.
Yeah, definitely
I can't go there.
Definitely for me.
Yeah, he's definitely going to make money, isn't he? But is it enough to justify that trade? Probably not.
Right, Trent Copeland, not here today, but we always do this segment. Cope's captains. So people really like Nathan Cleary this week at 22%. Thoughts on him as captain? I've got him locked in for now. Sea Eagles is an okay matchup. This is the Lindsay Smith off-load to a try, which that's fantastic. But a decent matchup for Cleary. Obviously had a really good game over the weekend and returned to form, even though he wasn't really in bad form. Is he a C this week?
I'm going Reece Walsh.
Yeah,
for obvious reasons. If I had Latrell, I'd be all over Latrell. I mean, Cleary will never disappoint you. I mean, his worst game is 70, 80. Get a play as your 100. So, and I think it's starting to click. And I think the right edge with Cleary is starting to function a lot more. I mean, losing kick outs really hurt that left edge. There's a bit of point of difference going to the right. And Hoskins, mate, can run a good line. So, try assist there.
Walsh, he's at 19%, so very popular as well. Are you worried about that base? If he doesn't score, it's he's 19 points or something.
Yeah, Canberra
40
haven't shown
points
much,
for your captain.
Raiders haven't shown much resilience up at Suncorp.
Yeah.
Ride that wave.
I think Walsh was his lowest score. I know he was relying on that attack, but his lowest score this year is like 84. Yeah. Until he doesn't pull out a big number, ride the wave.
Dave, my captaincy this year been atrocious. If I'm captaining Walsh, go somewhere else. I can't pick one.
Any love for Turbo? It's a really tough matchup up against the Panthers. Look, I can't do it. The defence is still sensational. So I couldn't do it this week. But it's in that same game as Cleary. So you're going to have to, potentially have to make that decision for that game.
You will never let you down, will you, Turbo? Not for me. I'd have Cleary above him.
I think that's the problem this week. There's a lot of the guys we'd normally turn to. There are some tough matchups. So people who might be considering Harry Grant going against the Roosters, that might be a bit of a tough match. Turbo against Panthers, that'll be a tough match. Will he get the attacking stats? Maybe not. Nicho Hynes is on the bye. So a lot of the guys we'd normally turn to have a slightly more difficult matchup this week than you'd expect. So I can see why a lot of people are on Cleary just as that safer, try and lock in a decent score this week and go for better matchups next week.
Yeah. One thing to point out, you mentioned Nicho Hynes. He's actually captained by 9% of people at the moment. And I'm talking about the top 10% of SuperCoaches, not all SuperCoaches. So definitely get in and change your teams. We're going to take questions to the end of the show. On YouTube, there are people asking if Schuster is still a buy, even though he's been ruled out. Which, I mean, I bought him last week knowing that he was ruled out. But I'm a little bit worried now that he's been ruled out for 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, so like I said, driving in, he was my buy. I think I probably will still buy him. It's a matter of time before he gets in and starts to deliver. As a Garrick owner, I really need him back because he just isolates those edges for the Sea Eagles. Like, I mean, Johns doesn't do the best job at that, so I really need him back, hopefully, to unlock Garrick. I don't hate it, dual position. It's a matter of time before he makes you money.
There's no suggestion that spot is not his. Hopefully it's just the club being cautious, making sure he's 100%, and then you'll just be in and in for the long haul. I don't see any problem with people jumping on him. We just need to be patient.
He's too cheap to ignore anyway, and no dual position, so...
I'm locking this in a zinger of the week right now because it's a cracker. Pretty sure the Tigers have more free merch to give away than Sanger this week.
Yes, solid.
Which is good. I think that's a high note to end the show. Big thank you, Dave Campbell and Joe Nadav. Good luck this weekend, and we'll catch you next week.